Talking with David Wickboldt. He's with Havilah Gardens Micro Farm. David, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well, Jim.
And, well, let's start it off. What is Havilah Garden Micro Farm? What is that?
So Havilah Gardens Micro Farm is a 3.5-acre micro farm on my property out in Bellflower, Illinois.
Okay.
And we are a seasonal produce grower, but our kind of crown jewel is our aquaponic greenhouses where we grow lettuce and cucumbers and tomatoes and various other things year-round.
So how did you get involved into that part of it? I mean, obviously you're growing stuff outside, but you're doing it this way too. How does that work?
So we found out about aquaponics about 4.5 years ago. We heard a speaker talking about this method of growing, which was a mixture of aquaculture, fish farming, and hydroponics, which is growing vegetables in a water substrate versus soil. And I've been growing things all my life, and I thought, this looks interesting. There's no weeding.
Right. That probably cuts down on some time a little bit.
Absolutely.
And maybe some headache. So so you got into doing it this way. Do you have a background in farming? I mean, how did you get into, putting this together?
I don't have a background in farming per se, but I've been growing things since I was a small child. I originally grew up growing green beans when I was about 4 years old, and it's kind of grown from there.
All right. And so you say about 3.5 acres, is that correct?
Yeah, we're on 3.5 acres.
And who all is on the farm working?
So it's myself, and I've got 2 part-time employees right now that help me out with farm labor. And
is this, since you're doing stuff... Are you able to go year round since you're not having to rely so much on the weather? Do you go year round?
Yes, we do go year round in the greenhouses, so they are climate controlled, and we're able to grow. It's pretty amazing being able to pick a tomato in the middle of January,
right,
and have it taste like something you just pulled out of the garden in August.
That's got to be very nice to have that fresh all year round for you. And so as far as the aquaponic part goes. Tell us a little bit about that. How does that work?
Well, aquaponics, it's a symbiotic system. So in aquaculture, you're generally going to have fish tanks. You're going to have some type of mechanical filtration and biofiltration that removes nitrates from the water. It's kind of like having your own home aquarium where you have a filter in there to clean the water for the fish. Well, in our system, we have that mechanical filtration, biofiltration, but the plants are our filter for the water because the main byproduct of the fish waste is ammonia, and that gets converted to nitrate, which is what the plants use. So we're able to use those 2 systems in conjunction with one another to mutually benefit each other.
And is there a lot of, with doing this, it's different, but, is there a lot of rules, regulations you have to follow since, can people buy the fish that you're farming, for lack of a better word? Yes,
they can. We are trying to figure out the best way to manage that. And hopefully we'll eventually get them to farmers market in one form or fashion.
Right.
But we could potentially also sell into meat markets and groceries and restaurants as well.
So is that, like I said, a lot of different kind of rules and regulations you have to follow since you're dealing with animals rather than produce?
There's a few. I mean, aquaculture isn't highly regulated in the state of Illinois. We are growing tilapia, which is a restricted fish because it's not a non-native fish. And so we do have to have Illinois Department of Natural Resources approval to import them and grow them here. But beyond that, we're following basic aquaculture safety standards. With the vegetable side of thing, we're following, in a sense, the FSMA or Food Safety Modernization Act regulations. It's on a small scale, so they don't all apply specifically to us. But like any other small farm, we're following basic food safety principles to make sure that our food is not only good, fresh, but also safety.
Talking with David Wickboldt. He's with Havilah Gardens Micro Farm. And as far as, getting to the aquaponics part of it, who did you have to? You said you heard a speaker talk about this. Who did you have to talk to? I mean, how many steps did it take to get all this set up? I mean, was a lot of conversation going on with other people who have done this?
It was a few steps. We had started doing some serious research as to what was involved in this type of system setup. We saw what the original speaker, John Parr, out of California, was doing out at his facility at the time. Took a few classes, and my business partner and I, Tim Culver's my business partner, and he's a plumber by trade, which is really good
That's handy.
To have when you're running a lot of piping in a greenhouse.
Mm-hmm.
But we eventually learned, and a lot of it was learning on the job, figuring out what the best designs were and how to make it work. And we've probably redesigned and reshuffled things around 3 or 4 times since we started.
So yeah, I would imagine just something different. Learn as you go.
Yes, definitely.
Any drawbacks to doing it, or anything that you wish was better, or do you have ideas about how it could be better? Just as you're going along.
Yeah, there's always ways to improve your system. But I think the major drawback to aquaponics right now is this entry level startup cost.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that goes into it because you're not only building out greenhouses to grow, but you're also building out an aquaculture system, building out a hydroponic system.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a fairly significant upfront cost confirmed in comparison to what you might say traditional farming, mm-hmm. or even any type of protected greenhouse growing.
Mm-hmm. As far as to the kind of fish, like you say, the tilapia, are there any other kinds that you are currently? Is the proper word farming, or is it what's the proper word to when you're working with fish?
I call it farming.
Okay.
I mean, it is when you're working with fish, it's considered aquaculture.
Okay, all right.
But in a general sense, it's farming.
So
it's livestock.
Are there? There you go. Are there any other fish that you are working with?
We actually started off with yellow perch.
Mm-hmm.
Which is it was a good choice for us because they are cold water friendly. I mean,
right.
our tank could freeze over and they'd be fine. But currently we are using tilapia. It's a warm water fish. It's very adaptable to everything but cold water temps.
Mm-hmm.
But you can use bluegill. People use a hybrid striped bass, trout. There's a huge facility up in Wisconsin now that's growing trout and salmon in aquaponics. So there's a lot of different options as far as the type of fish you want to grow.
Well, let's go outside. What are we growing in the ground? What have we grown so far this year?
Well, we have a 45-tree orchard.
Mm-hmm.
I've got grapes, blueberries, strawberries, asparagus. That's kind of more of our perennial crops, but we also grow sweet corn, melons, squash,
mm-hmm.
A few other things.
Anything you did this year different from other years? I mean, do you gotta think about different items you like to try, and some work, some don't?
I always try a few new items each year.
Mm-hmm.
This year, a couple new kinds of winter squash that we tried. Some of the kabochas, and we did a baby blue Hubbard this year, but not a whole lot different. We primarily focus on figuring out what is going to be popular at markets and mm-hmm. selling in grocery, and try to grow what people will buy.
David Wickboldt with Havilah Gardens Micro Farm. Where can people find your produce?
Right now, we're at the Champaign Farmers Market through the end of this month, mm-hmm. through the end of October. And you'll also find us at Common Ground Food Co-op mm-hmm. in Urbana and Harvest Market in Champaign.
All right. Anything you're looking at? We're getting towards, I guess, the end of the outside season, but since you got greenhouses, you're doing it year-round. But, anything you're thinking about trying for next year as the fall and winter comes in?
I haven't really made any decisions on that. Mm-hmm. We'll do our planning for the outside crops sometime around January, February. And but indoors, our English cucumbers are really popular. Mm-hmm. We're growing figs indoors. Those figs are going to be at Farmers Market this week and probably the next week as well. So we grow some interesting stuff, and we'll see what happens.
Just keep it going year round. So
yeah.
Do you find that going year round is easier than maybe just being seasonal?
The challenge with it is you never get a break.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of farmers they look forward to that winter break because the summer's a pretty high number of hours, pretty high stress season for a lot of us farmers. But it is, to be able to grow things and get fresh produce year round there's nothing to compare to it.
If people want to find out about it, can they search online? Do you have a social media website, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we have a Facebook page at Havilah Gardens, mm-hmm. and you can reach us at havilaghgardens.com.
All right. David Wickboldt, Havilah Gardens Micro Farm. They're located in Bellflower. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks, Jim.